Hi there. This is an end-of-the-month casting news roundup for House of the Dragon Season 2. That there wasn't big casting news since the end of June when the Dragon Seed stuff got leaked. And just a few days ago, however, we got the big Jane Eyre leak, but I was already working on a casting news roundup for little bits and pieces we learned the past few weeks. So I split this off from the other one. The next big filming cycle also won't begin until mid-August, and that'll last about 6 weeks, and then all filming will end last week of September. Though they'll come back for pickup shots and stuff, a lot of that'll be interior things at Leavesden Studios, but generally I made a list of 7 points I wanted to cover in this. It's really 2 at the beginning of just other casting news from the Jane Eyre stuff. Point 1, and we have confirmed this, Maddie Evans will return as Dyana, Helena's handmaid that Aegon raped in episode 8. She was only in one scene, but it was such a great performance, and I thought for the sake of this actress it'd be nice to see if she could come back, and she will. She's pretty active on Instagram and in the channels of all the other actors, so we hear from her pretty frequently. We'll see what's going on with her. I honestly don't know. Because, like, some people suggested maybe the moon tea didn't take and she's pregnant with a bastard. Well, yeah, but there hasn't been a time skip since then, so be a baby. I mean, maybe, because in the book version, there's 2 confirmed bastards of Aegon. One with the handmaid that he assaulted with Helena's handmaid, but they're playing around with that, so we honestly don't know. Sometimes moon tea doesn't work, but that's because Lysa had some problems with it, but you'd take more if you didn't. So I don't think that's what it is at all. I'm not really sure what they're doing with her. We know there's going to be scenes of them carousing at taverns, and maybe she got work there. I don't know. Maybe you'll see her as a refugee somewhere. It's impossible to say, but for the sake of the actress, it's nice that Maddie Evans will be returning as Dyana. Oh, and by the way, that most of these leaks, if you've seen them on Redanian Intelligence in their news roundups, I am weeks behind. I found this out when Redanian did, because I have access to the same behind-the-scenes resources they did. We actually share them. I'm looking at the same things as them. But I did not have time to report on. Sorry, I was starting a new job. But they figured out Maddie Evans from the body double, from the stunt doubles for the when you're looking at a camera from behind, that they found it out through the casting stuff that way. But this other stuff, I'm not going to list it for everything, but we have confirmed it's not a rumor, she's coming back. The second one is, I'm not trying to make clickbait, it's more of a meta commentary on the "is that Sara Snow" game, that unless it's a very specific character, like the Velaryons are pretty specific because of their race, anyone who's just white male age 30 or white female age 20, and they don't have a particular, like, Valyrian look to them, that's so common it could be anyone. That point 2 is that Erica Ford of HBO's recent The Nevers show has joined the cast. She is listed, it's in the IMDb background stuff. She was recently in the Barbie movie as one of the skippers, I think. But a lot of people are going, well, maybe she's Sara Snow, and I admit she could be. But I'm bringing this up to caution. Who are other roughly late teens to early 20s female roles in this? There's Sara Snow, but there's also Black Ally Blackwood. And then again, you could even have Samantha Tarly, the wife of Ormond Hightower, or women at Harrenhal, or then there's just the it's frustrating when you're going through casting stuff, just the endless mass of background King's Landing civilians and tavern operator in King's Landing that we have no idea. We can't really narrow it down. Unless on social media we see them taking photos on location where they're filming Winterfell stuff, or really being followed by the actor who plays Jace, or the actor who will play Cregan. We don't know who's playing Cregan yet, so could be Sara, but could be any of a number of other people. We know she's in the show, just who is she playing, we have no idea. And I hate it, I do not want to make clickbait where people go, could this be this? Just, look, it's a female role of roughly that age range. The only thing I could say before the Jane Eyre casting news came out is I'd point out she couldn't be Jane Eyre because Jane Eyre's like a decade older than that. She's Rhaenyra's age, late 20s to early 30s, for the actress, not necessarily for the character. But Erica Ford has joined. We don't know exactly what. We're still waiting on Cregan. Either they hit it really well, or more probably, I think next month they're going to be the August filming will include filming in the Forest of Surrey again. It's like a 15-minute drive for when they filmed the Royal Hunt in season 1, episode 3. They're filming there again. And I think that's going to be like the woods around Winterfell, like the Wolf's Woods, and maybe Cregan they'll have by then, we don't know. Those were the two big points, that Dyana is coming back with Maddie Evans, and Erica Ford is someone, and this brings up the wider question of how do we even guess who these people are? Next 3 points are truly Roundup mode. I'm just rattling them off. Graham McKnight has been cast as a character named Paxter Strong. There are a couple of unnamed minor members of House Strong, not from the main branch, but the cousins and nephews of the main branch. And there's more than one minor branch, and there's a couple, they mentioned there's like more than a dozen unnamed younger members when Aemond reaches Harrenhal at one point, but we do know from the earlier announcement that Simon Beale has been cast as Simon Strong, who is a named character. He's the castellan of Harrenhal, who runs the castle while Larys isn't there. So, okay, they assigned names to some of the background Strongs. That's no big revelation that some of them they'll bother to give names because it's an extended family. Point 4. Samson Kayo and Roderick Hill have been cast. We don't know as what. They might be in a scene with, this is one of our earlier leaks, that James Doherty was cast as a character called Clay. Maybe that's a code name, maybe not. This brings up a wider issue of, well, Samson Kayo is a black actor, that maybe he's from the Triarchy. Because I said in separate things that we saw a leak from the makeup department where it said there was a sheet that said, like, Triarchy Season 2 makeup test Tuesday or something like that along those lines. So, in some capacity, the Triarchy will be coming back in Season 2. Does this mean we'll get the Battle of the Gullet? Not necessarily. They might just be one or two envoys coming to the Red Keep to treat with Otto Hightower to say, look, the Triarchy has a very ponderous and slow bureaucracy because it's 33 magisters and a council. It'll take them time to agree to send a fleet to help you fight Daemon. Just be patient. It might be a scene like that, just Otto meeting with an envoy. And then again, it might not be a Triarchy soldier at all. Kayo might be playing like a fisherman from King's Landing or a merchant captain of a ship. Because that's often how they work in characters of color and stuff. That it really bothers me how much the Game of Thrones TV show screwed this up for a mainstream TV audience. Thinks that, like, women don't frequently hold political power when they do, like Jane Eyre inherited in her own right. I mean, not often, but like at least in every region of the Seven Kingdoms where there's a dozen vassals, in a given generation, at least one of those houses has a female ruler. It's not that unusual. Or that mainstream audience, I've seen reactors saying, wow, why aren't people surprised? Shouldn't people be surprised to see black people in the streets of King's Landing? Well, no, in the books you see them all the time. The Summer Islanders, who are merchants and fishermen, mostly along the docks, but throughout the city, like Chataya, who they cut, is a black woman from the Summer Isles who runs a high-end brothel. It isn't that unusual in the major cities. Now, in Winterfell, that's different, I admit. That's not a big commerce hub, it's not a port, but King's Landing, or particularly Old Town, oh yeah, we see Summer Islanders here all the time. It's a port city. They're a merchant people. We see that. So, for all I know, he could be a cabbage stall salesman in the streets of King's Landing or something that gets knocked over. He could be a fisherman. I'm leaning towards, actually, fisherman or merchant because we've heard of multiple scenes where people are sneaking in and out. More than one person is sneaking in and out of King's Landing on a fishing boat. So that's what I think that might be. But opportunity to bring up, we have also heard that they will be Triarchy characters in Season 2 in some capacity, possibly just as envoys. We don't know. And this is really just burning through at point 5. Other people who have been cast include actors Jack Stadden, Tom Cott, Michael Elkin, Matthew Couchman, and Ted Riley. And these are background things, like we know Riley, his thing did say he's playing a crofter, which is a type of small independent farmer. If you're wondering if the younger guy is Tom is Daeron, no, he's like a squire to the Greens in a different in the Crown Lands campaign. We know who he's playing. We can generally tell they're casting a lot of. This is good. The Game of Thrones would have cut vassal houses rather than introduce a lot of names. Like, we know they are from the spy photos of the aftermath of Rook's Rest, they're introducing all of the Crown Lands houses, like Rosby and Stokeworth, or stuff we've heard of the casting news for Harrenhal, that you will see relatively minor families. They're going down to the level of casting people for, like, House Vance and House Piper by name. They might not be big roles, but they intend on name-dropping them just to give the context of it's more than just the Tullys. Okay, there's other vassals that Game of Thrones shied away from. It's too many names, they won't remember all the vassals. Then the world feels smaller. So these aren't big casting. They might be minor guards. We'll figure out who they're playing as they come, but just to get their name in the record here if we've heard this other casting news. Speaking of the Riverlands, that brings me to point 6. Just to reiterate, these are 2 points I've split off in my Jane Eyre video now. To reiterate, we will see the Tullys in live action in Season 2. They have cast actors to play them. I know who they are. I have seen the same spy leaks that are confirmed that Redanian and everyone else sees, but the spy community decided this might out our sources if we share it right now, A. And B, we just had the big Jane Eyre news. Can we spread this out over the next month? And I said, okay, if you're telling me not to share. So unlike a clickbait channel that would just splurge all this out and make stuff up, I know who's playing them. I can't tell you yet, but on a broadest level, I don't think this is giving anything away, and that I did say I wouldn't give away specifics. Just, I was worried they'd leave the Tullys off screen and just have Daemon, when he said, I'm going to Harrenhal, I'm going to go take it and then try to treat with the Tullys to get them to join us. And in the books, it's the Tullys' grandfather, Lord Grover. He's very old, and he's a Green supporter, but he's bedridden, he's dying, and his grandsons and great-grandsons come and say, look, he'll be dead in a few months, he's on his deathbed, we will have to stay neutral until then we can join you, we really have no choice. I can see them coming to explain that to him, but just, I was worried that they'd leave the Tullys off-screen, shove them off-screen, and just have Daemon reacting to a letter they sent, because they won't really come into the narrative until the next season after that, because they stay neutral for a while, because they're internally divided about what to do. Now, they have cast people, you will hear about that. The one thing I will say is, it's not more actors from Raised by Wolves. Don't hope for that if you're big fans that it's not more Raised by Wolves people. Yet. Maybe they'll be Raised by Wolves people in other roles, just not the Tullys, but that's as much as I know now. And that, of course, brings us to my 7th and final point. Amanda Collin, mother from Raised by Wolves, has been cast as Jane Eyre. And I just had a trivia thing that I split off from the other main video I did on this. I split it off for time. It's just talking about the issue of, actor nationalities. We thought was interesting that if you think about it, Amanda Collin is from Denmark, which means that she'll be the first international actor outside of the British Isles working on House of the Dragon, which is a little different from Game of Thrones, which makes sense because Game of Thrones is much more of a world-spanning story. Even within Westeros, it was everything from King's Landing to the Wall. And then you have, of course, Daenerys' storyline going to the Dothraki Sea, but House of the Dragon is a lot more focused on Westeros, and even then, Season 1 is really focused on just the capital region. And we'll see bits of Winterfell. It's more the Winterfell characters coming south, but we don't go beyond the Wall. Dorne doesn't really figure in that much into the story because they're neutral, because they're still independent, that there aren't as many international actors for this, even though it's an international hit. And you think there could be, like Game of Thrones, like Peter Dinklage was Tyrion. Of course, there's only so many, actors with dwarfism that, can play that kind of role. He's already a big actor by that point. But in terms of nationalities, like, there were two prominent Americans in season one, Dinklage and Jason Momoa, who's native Hawaiian and stuff. And I already knew of Momoa from other projects he's done. This was, of course, still before his Aquaman days. But you had people from a few other things. There were, like, two other recurring roles that were Australian. But a lot of other things from Europe, because they're filming in Europe. Not so much Spain actors, but, like, the Jaqen actor and Shay were from Germany, or Charisse Van Houten, Melisandre, she's Dutch. But otherwise, you didn't really have a lot. Like, Pedro Pascal's obviously Chilean-American, but that came up later. But other things that you could work in there. The big thing, of course, is Scandinavia. There were a decent number of Scandinavian actors in relatively prominent roles. Of course, Nikolai Coster-Waldau is also from Denmark, and he's Jaime Lannister. Later, they picked up... I really feel bad for Pilu Asbeck, who plays TV Euron, because even he didn't. He's made disparaging comments about TV Euron since then. I've seen other stuff he's in. He's a really good actor. That's all the pity for it. But other Scandinavian regions that you've had, like the Tormund actor, he is a prominent Norwegian actor. He's been in a lot of things. And Hafthor Bjornsson, the mountain that rides, he's from Iceland. So we had a decent number of Scandinavian actors in Game of Thrones throughout its run. Really, we're not seeing that in House of the Dragon, that everyone is... There's a decent number of Welsh actors in it, actually, that Rhys Ifans is actually... he translates books into Welsh. He's a very prominent Welsh actor. There's a decent number of Scottish actors. Obviously not as many people from Northern Ireland, because they're not filming in Northern Ireland anymore as day players, but so there's some more people from England, obviously, because they moved production there. Not seeing quite as many... Of course, the one big international thing was that Millie Alcock is Australian. And so is Ryan Corr, who plays Harwin Strong. So, like, the wedding scene where he throws her over his shoulder to get her out of the mob, that's like the two Australian actors in it. But otherwise, there's no Americans or Canadians or anything. No one from continental Europe, like Germany or Dutch or anything. But the first really recurring one since those two, who are gone, they were just season one actors and they're gone now, will be Amanda Collin, who's Danish, from Denmark. Oh, one exception, though, is that if you've noticed, it's like, okay, it was a one-shot appearance. The one time you see adult Lena Velaryon in episode 6, she was played by Nana Blondell, who actually grew up in Sweden. She's a prominent Swedish actress. You can tell there's a hint of an accent there from Sweden. But otherwise, like, what are other international European actors who might show up in season 1, in season 2, and subsequent seasons that they've generally favored people from the British Isles for this? I know it's a really long shoot. You need people who are willing to go there, but it's like a one-off appearance by, I don't know, the Martells or the Greyjoys, who are not probably not going to be in season 2. There's other international actors who could plausibly do these things. I mean, obviously, Henry Cavill, that'll be going back in because he's British, but no, okay, we're not... I think Henry Cavill's a great actor, and I'd love to see him in a role matching his talents. But, like, he'll be too old to play Daemon Blackfire by the time they get to a show like that. That it would be a waste of him to cast him in something in House of the Dragon Season 2 just for the sake of casting him. I think he'd age out of being Aegon the Conqueror, unless he'd, like, play older Aegon after a time skip. I want him in the show, but just for something worthy of the actor, not just, fan baiting like that. Stunt casting. So here we have another Danish actress in here. First one since Nikolai, so they're going for that. I have not seen everything Amanda Collin is in, and like I said in the other video, I'm used to seeing her as this androgynous, almost flat effect, emotional effect robot. But she's been in other things. I need to check out clips of other things she's been in to get a feel for, like, how would she play Jane Arryn? I don't really... compare to the robot. What am I saying here? That of course it'll be different. So, just in terms of what is the composition of the cast in terms of nationalities and stuff is interesting. Are you going to bring up, like, Sonoya Mizuno and other actors? There's other actors who have dual nationality. They're British nationals. That she grew up in London. There's one or two other actors who were like the Orwell actor's from Cameroon, but he's lived in England for decades and he has citizenship. So what I consider is I'm going by nationality. You see, not ethnicity or where they were born. And like Fabian Frankel, he's part Jewish Indian, part French, but he grew up in London, so I count that as British national. Just they're not really picking famous American actors. But then again, they never did other than Peter Dinklage, and part of it was because he has that disability. So there aren't that many other prominent actors like that. That would it be a global search? That for the case of young Rhaenyra, it was a global search. That they cast the adult versions first, and they did indeed do a global search and found this young Australian actress who actually had a couple of big roles under her belt so far. She'd done a few other things. She had that road trip movie. That she'd done some things of note, even though she was considered not a prominent actress yet. But what other roles will they have a world-spanning search for? That'll be interesting. So these are all of the casting news from July, when it was a relative lull in production. The big news was Jane Eyre. I put that in a separate thing. The big stuff for us here is Diana's coming back. Is Erica Ford, Sarah Snow, or Ally Blackwood, or someone? I have the courage to admit that I don't know, but I'm just letting you know these are actors on our radar right now. They're on our radar. We'll see who they're playing.